Thanks for tuning in to the Anchor Group podcast. This is officially episode 9. This week, we are going to be talking with one of our very own NetSuite functional consultants named Mitchell. Mitchell is going to be talking about ways that you can improve your NetSuite environment to maximize your use of it to get the most bang for your buck. We're going to focus on topics like quality reporting, process automation, and at the beginning, Mitch is going to share with us his origin story about how he got introduced to the world of NetSuite. Hey, Mitch, thanks for joining our call today. How are you doing today?
Good. Great to be here. How are you?
Things are going well over here. You know, it's a Friday when we record these podcasts. That's always a good way to end the week, chatting with some experts and talking about things like NetSuite. So, you know, not too bad. So, Mitchell, thank you for joining the call today, or the podcast today. Now, you work in the world of NetSuite, and you've worked in the world of NetSuite for your professional career so far. So let's dig into that a little bit. I know this podcast, we've got some listeners who have e-commerce websites or who have ERPs, and maybe they're, run into some complex challenges or are looking to learn something new. So, today we're looking forward to hearing about you and some of the work that you've done and your expertise. But before we hop into that, just curious if you could share with those listening a little bit about your origin story, about how you got involved in NetSuite. I know you have an interesting one, so tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. I'd be happy to. I do have a little bit of a unique path to finding my way into the ERP space. My father has been in the ERP space for, a dozen years or so. And during COVID, I was going to college online, living with my parents. And my dad had just taken a job at NetSuite, and that was a fully remote job. And so we ended up spending a lot of days, me sitting on the couch in our living room and him just in the next room over in his office. And I would just sit and do homework and listen to him on sales calls all day long. And I always found that I was really interested. I was always noting things down to ask him about when he got off of his next call. And I found that way that I was really, really interested in the space. And I kind of kept that with me the rest of the way through college until I was job hunting and landed here at AnchorGroup.
Right now, Mitch, that's funny because right now I feel like, Marvel movies are kind of big. And I know at the beginning of some Marvel movies, there's always like, the creators will preface it with like the villain or the hero's origin story or that sort of thing. And I feel like that kind of sets you up very well for the conversation we're about to have today.
Well, hopefully it's a hero story.
Yeah, that's right. Hopefully it's a hero story. I'm sure it is. So, Mitch, what we want to talk about today and what I want to just kind of pick your brain on and understand from you are some of the main struggles that the people you work with, the companies you work with, some of the main struggles they have working with NetSuite. And before we really hop into that, share with us, what is your job title and what do you do for Anchor Group on a daily basis?
Yeah, absolutely. I am a project manager / functional consultant here at Anchor Group. Definitely spend more of my time on the functional side, which is to say really, I'm the guy getting his hands dirty when a client has a problem that they need solved in NetSuite to figure out how are we going to solve it and then go in and actually create that solution that's going to make that individual business's profits higher, life easier, that type of thing.
That's amazing. I bet you have a chance to help a lot of different people so that they can sleep better at night so they aren't worrying about whatever's going wrong or going awry in their NetSuite instance. So, Mitchell, what are some of as you talk to clients, what are some of the problems that they're experiencing, or what are some ways that somebody who's currently using NetSuite could improve their NetSuite environment to just work better for their company?
Yeah. Well, to start the conversation diving into problems that people run into within NetSuite, one thing about NetSuite is that it does solve for so many problems. But what you get from that is this really great learning curve that can make it really daunting for a new NetSuite user to try to come in and effectively do their job in the same way that they might have honestly been able to do in a more simple manner in another system. The reason for that level of difficulty is that lets you accomplish much more than many other systems do. But with that, I think the two greatest struggles that I solve for on a day-to-day basis generally revolve around either automating processes, really just looking to save people time. I know you and I have talked before about how just how much more we could accomplish in our lives with an extra hour in our day. I think that's really the biggest problem that we solve for, along with just reporting and having access to better insights into our data. Everybody wants to be able to see more data. We're such a data-driven world today, and NetSuite really does have the functionality to provide a lot of that data, as long as you know how to get it.
Yeah, data-driven. You're not kidding. Everything has some sort of chart to go with it these days. It seems like, which is not a bad thing, right? But I know at times people can get analysis paralysis, right? Afraid to take action based on having too much data, not knowing what to do with it, or just not understanding the data that they're given. So let's start on that, right? Because data can be extremely important if you actually know what you're looking at, if you know how to use it. So Mitchell, talk to us about that learning curve, if about setting up data. Well, let's backtrack for a second. First off, my question for you, just because I don't quite understand right now, is what sort of reporting comes out of the box, is native within the NetSuite environment, and then how can somebody build and scale the native reporting to really build it into something that they need?
Yeah, I think the main two user interface reporting options that everybody thinks about with your standard out-of-the-box NetSuite are going to be the reports feature in NetSuite, which are some fairly standard collapsible and expandable reports across a variety of quote-unquote departments or your different lines of business. And those generally primarily exist to give insights that can be looked at from a quick top-level view or broken out to a more detailed view.
What's an example of like the data that somebody could surface in a report like that or access in a report like that? Are we talking product information? Are we talking orders, invoices, more on the accounting side? What type of data can be broken down in one of those reports?
Yeah, so it spans really wide. You can really get everything from sales data, seeing that at the order level and then being able to expand it out to like what individual items were on those orders, along with your AP or AR aging. NetSuite has some nice native reporting functionality around those things. And, nobody wants to be behind on their bills or be waiting longer than they have to get paid for products or services rendered. So the AP and AR functionality around reporting is a really, really useful tool. There are definitely additional reports that come natively. There's a whole slew of them, I would say, in the probably 40 plus ballpark that just already exist when you load up NetSuite. But beyond that, you are able to customize these reports. So you can really take any of those 40 plus native reports that you start with and say, well, I want to break this out by my department, or I want to break this out by which of my 4 locations this is at, or I want to add a couple of additional columns. Yeah, it's helpful for me to see the item name, but I actually am generally thinking about what I have in the sales description for that item helps me know, rather than, the SKU that might just, if I'm not working with the SKU every single day, might not be super helpful for me to see 14 letters and numbers in what feels like a random order. So I really think that reporting functionality natively has a ton of value just simply by digging through those things, but especially has a ton of value when you start to customize those to help fit the exact needs of your business.
And then a follow-up question to that, Mitchell. Can anybody who has NetSuite user permission can anybody find those reports, access them, customize them, or are there going to be specific users within the company that only have access to modify those reports?
That's a great question, first of all. Generally speaking, not everybody is going to have access to those reports, and many folks who do have access to some reports aren't going to have access to others. Truly, this is by design. You want the data that matters to specific people to be in those specific people's hands. That being said, you can make those reports visible to anybody that in your organization needs to see them. And really, you can do that in a few different ways, both at the permissions level as well as on the individual report, allowing somebody who, say, maybe might not generally be able to see this type of report to see a specific report that will be helpful to them, or saying, this report is really only valuable for our senior sales reps, but our junior sales reps probably don't need this data because they're not on our enterprise accounts or something like that. You can really either pare down or expand that visibility to make sure that the data is in the right hands.
Yeah, now, further question about just data being in the right hands. I know there is a cost associated with having certain users be able to access different parts of your NetSuite. So say, for example, a company did not want their outside sales team, or let's use that as an example. Their outside sales team to have necessarily a NetSuite license, individual licenses for that entire team. Is it possible, Mitchell, to export one of those reports to share with your team on, say, a regular basis, maybe monthly, maybe quarterly, or does the export of those reports get really wonky and weird and just messed up? Like, how easy is it to be able to share those reports with people that are not actually in the NetSuite environment? Any insights on that?
Yeah, absolutely. All reports in NetSuite are exportable, either through Excel or as a PDF, and I believe even as a Word document as well. And what this allows you to do is, for example, I think your outside sales team is a great example. Your sales manager is leaning on a lot of the NetSuite functionality, so they are a full licensed user in NetSuite. But maybe their team, you use a third-party CRM, so their team isn't in NetSuite. They can still pull all that data. They can bring it to your monthly review with your whole team, something along those lines. So there definitely is the functionality there to bring key data from NetSuite, from your source of truth, to the places outside of NetSuite where it might need to be as well. Granted, you, in my experience, build reports a little differently when you know you're regularly going to be exporting them, especially exporting as PDFs. You don't really have the ability to change the way things are spaced out. So you get a little bit creative with how you lay out your data there. But the nice thing about NetSuite is, as long as you're willing to be a little bit creative, you can pretty much accomplish whatever you want to.
And if somebody is struggling right now with their exports, is that where, if they contact Anchor Group, someone like yourself or someone in your role, is that where you would come in and help straighten out that data and get the export looking the way they need to and be creative with that data?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we, on a regular basis, help with really every step of that process, all the way from just how can I leverage these reports that already exist to be more helpful for my business, all the way through to how can I customize these reports to be extra helpful for my business, and even so far as I want to be able to export these reports, so let's set them up the best to be exported regularly.
Yeah. Well, that's great that there are features to be able to have it exported regularly, because I know getting data in the right people's hands, getting the right data in the right people's hands can be very impactful for a business, especially when making business decisions. Now, one last question for you on this reporting. I've spoken with a couple people, right, who have either been put into roles within the company where now they're the person in charge of NetSuite for their entire company, or maybe they've taken on a role or been hired to do something and didn't quite have as much NetSuite experience as they thought would be good, or maybe they were handed more NetSuite responsibilities once they got the job and were there for a couple months. And I've seen times where I'm on a call with people and sometimes they're just a deer in a headlight and they're like, what is going on right now? I need help understanding NetSuite. So Mitchell, when we talk about reporting, what's the learning curve on understanding reporting, understanding how to customize the reports? What is your experience there, and how long does it take somebody to learn how to use those filters, those features to access reporting and use it the way that they should?
Yeah, I think a pretty significant part of what the learning curve really is comes down to overall level of experience building reports in other systems. I think having been somebody responsible for reporting puts you at a significant advantage coming in. Where to click is going to be different. The data from one company to the next is going to be different. But if you really know what you want things to look like, there's a real trial and error learning path, I think, with reporting. And I think what it really comes down to is just getting the reps in with how NetSuite specifically works. And you can learn pretty quickly how to create some pretty cool insights with native NetSuite reporting.
And one plug I want to make is here at Anchor Group. If you check out our website, AnchorGroup.tech, we have training on various parts of the NetSuite environment. Right? So if you're, for example, since we're talking about reporting, if you need training or your team needs training, whether it's videos or helpful docs on it, at AnchorGroup.tech, we have some of those resources just available to everybody, whoever needs it. Right? So if you find if you yourself are in a moment where you're struggling with reporting, or like I said, your team needs more reporting, please feel free to go ahead and check that out as well. That can help shorten the learning curve, right? The time it's going to take to learn all that stuff if you or somebody on your team's new. So Mitchell, at the beginning of our call, you also mentioned process automation as a way that companies can maybe use NetSuite more, maybe a strength of NetSuite. Maybe people don't quite understand how automation can work within the NetSuite environment. So things are still really manual and they're running into trouble and it's spending a lot of time, energy, and money on these manual tasks when it actually could be automated. So let's dive into that a little bit here. What are some of the ways that you can automate a NetSuite environment?
Yeah, so I think one of the most common things you'll possibly hear from a new NetSuite user is blank used to be 3 clicks in my old system, and it's 12 in NetSuite.
Interesting. Okay.
And anybody out there who's experiencing that in any area of NetSuite, you're not alone. I promise you, that's an incredibly common thing to feel. And lucky for us, something that we can solve for. I think regularly the transaction processes, your order to cash and procure to pay processes are really areas where we have a lot of room to make things operate really different than they do natively, and really customized to fit your needs. And I find for a lot of folks that it's not even that anything huge and crazy and custom is needed. It's just, hey, I'm wasting a lot of time clicking buttons that, like, these 3 actions could have been 1 button click instead of 3. And
so
I think
Mitchell, break that down for us for a second. You say natively, it's from what I'm here, if I'm understanding you correctly, what it sounds like natively, there might be quite a few clicks in the process, and there's ways to, in a sense, automate some of that. So walk us through an example, if you can. Like, what is something, maybe procure to pay, for example, what does that look like natively? But then what are some of the specific things you can automate as part of that process?
Yeah. Here's a great example. If I'm if I'm selling a product and I am working with a customer who likes to have confirmation that I've received their order, they then like confirmation when I've shipped their order out so they know it's on the way. And additionally, when I'm going to bill that order, when I am creating that invoice, I want to confirm that they've seen that they owe my company money. So in that process there, we have not just the creation of the order leading into sending that order out, but then additionally the creation of that item fulfillment in NetSuite, which has a whole lot of time spent behind the scenes picking, packing, and shipping items. But then also our team trying to build that, we can put together some really, really, really cool solutions that are going to make it significantly quicker to communicate with our customers, whether that be truly automatically or even at the click of a button. I've even seen so complicated, so unique as knowing that we have different types of customers and our different types of customers like to see those emails in a different way. And automatically behind the scenes, we know what type of customer that is. The system behind the scenes is going to decide, because it's this type of customer, send them this email content with this template for their order confirmation automatically. All I had to do was create the order, and it's taking care of that work behind the scenes. So we have the ability to do some really cool, unique things like that.
Interesting. I could see how that would be very helpful, especially for some unique cases out there. So in addition to automating kind of that part of the business to consumer customer relationship, what are other parts maybe that you can automate within NetSuite that help the business? So if I'm a business and this is my NetSuite environment, like what can I do to help streamline my internal processes through automation? That way I'm winning back my internal team's time for other tasks.
Yeah. I would say a great example there of internal process automation is the great level of functionality we have with designing and implementing approval processes. In many different areas of NetSuite, different businesses will leverage some sort of approval just to be able to give a quick second check. You know how helpful it can be from time to time to just have a second set of eyes on something. And we can set up these processes that instead of me creating some sort of document and then sending that document to my boss, who then sends it to their boss, and waiting 3 days to have made progress on the task that I was trying to work on right now for approval, we can set up that approval process with an email notification. So as soon as I go to enter this order, for example, my boss gets an email. If it looks good to them, they can just click at the click of a button, send it on to the next approver. Or if it doesn't, at the click of a button, send an email back to me saying, hey, this isn't good. You need to fix X, Y, or Z. And I think that's a great example of an internal process that can be so much smoother with what NetSuite has to offer.
Yeah, and when it comes to setting up these automations and understanding what's possible out there, I know the AnchorGroup team and the team you work on, Mitchell, I know that team is very experienced, and over the years, they've worked on a lot of different customizations and automations and that sort of thing. And I think the team has honestly really learned the limits of where you can push the native functionality and then where you need to get pretty creative with some solutions around it. So, Mitchell, as we kind of wrap up our conversation today, just one more question for you. In your experience working with NetSuite, where do you think its this is going to sound kind of weird, but its strongest strength is, right? Like, where is it the strongest? Where's the golden egg, in a sense, compared to maybe other platforms out there, right? I know many, many merchants are on NetSuite, but like, where does it hold the most weight in the ERP arena?
Yeah. For me, I think the obvious answer is, as somebody who's certainly not a CPA, accounting is by far NetSuite's strongest area, in my opinion. At its core, it's an accounting software with a bunch of other functionality on the side. Granted, every ERP has its individual strengths and weaknesses, but for an accountant who hasn't been using one system for 20 years and only remembers how to use that system, there's just so much functionality on the accounting side that NetSuite has that I think that is really the best selling point NetSuite has, and it can do some really unique things there.
That's good. Good to hear. And I know having software that is strong in that area is incredibly important, especially as you expand and grow a business and do not want to get in trouble with the government. So
yes, that's an important piece.
Always a good thing to have. Well, Mitchell, thank you for taking the time to chat today.
Yeah.
It's been good. Always good to learn more about NetSuite. And if you're listening to this podcast as we wrap it up and you're looking for more information on anything we talked about, feel free to check out our website, AnchorGroup.tech. As I said earlier, we have some helpful training tools on there, helpful information that can get you off the ground as you start learning about NetSuite or working in NetSuite, or there's resources that can help your team become more dangerous in a good way when it comes to your NetSuite environment. So once again, thank you, Mitchell. And until next time, everybody, keep on chasing greatness, and we'll talk to you in the next episode.